All right. So the reason I love this subject is because relationship to self, in my own personal opinion, although I would say that it becomes everyone's opinions once they start to learn it, is that your relationship to yourself will determine the relationship quality that you have in every area of your life. The depth that you get to understand who you are allows you to go deeper with other people, because what happens is you begin to learn more and more about you, and you begin to develop more compassion for yourself, for your past, for what you've been through. You then can have more compassion for other people. And I talk all the time on Instagram and Facebook about how we must not mistake compassion and tolerance. And I know I wasn't planning on talking about that in this exact moment, but I think it's something that continues to need to be explained. Is you can have compassion for yourself and where you've come from and what you've been through, and for other people. But you also, that doesn't confer that you should tolerate behavior that is subpar from other people and also from yourself. Now, you can have compassion for mistakes, but you really, on some level, we shouldn't tolerate continued mistake making from ourselves too, because we're really letting down ourselves when we do that. Our behavior is not operating at our highest level of knowledge. We're not living with, if we were to integrate all the wisdom we truly have, we wouldn't be doing some things. It took me a long time to really learn that. And so there's going to be time for questions. There's going to be exercises. So I want you to have a notebook with you. Hopefully you have some water, because, hey, hydration is really important. So the first part, and I can't actually see my mouse, so I have to do this, is I want you, man, why is the mouse not showing up? Man, this is annoying. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, so I want you guys to answer this. Give me that. If you can give me that, give me that. I want you guys to answer that. Like, what are you most excited to learn about? Because I think like a lot of this is about figuring out our purpose. But in order to figure out your purpose, you have to figure out who you are, right? And what your passions are. And I think that this becomes like a really beautiful opportunity, that the more you get to know these deeper parts of you and these deeper parts of why you show up the way you do, you can change them. Okay, we have 71%, so I'll give you another 10 seconds. 5, 4, okay, it doesn't look like we're getting any more. So here's the results. Sweet. So pretty good breakdown. You know, people, I mean, I like that you guys chose all of it. I feel like it's kind of a setup question sometimes, right? So I'm going to be doing different polls as we go through it, just so everyone can begin to see what some other people's thoughts are, what some other people's experiences are. Because it's important to recognize that we're not alone in this experience. This is all very similar for all of us. So I talked a little bit about why our relationship to ourselves matters so much. And for me, my life has been a constant unlayering, you know, an unbecoming of sorts, of like who I thought I was to who I am today and what that even means. And I think that the really interesting part for me has been learning what I was taught and separating that from who I am today. Separating that from like, what am I truly passionate about? What was really meaningful for me growing up? What was I taught by my religion, my family, my culture? And I think when I actually look through, I love this quote from Marianne Williamson. And here, let me just move my little chat window. My mouse is really causing a lot of trouble right now. Hold on one sec. I apologize for this. Man, hold on one sec, guys. I apologize. All right, what is happening here? There we go. Hold on one sec. There we go. I apologize, but my camera is not working. My mouse is not showing up on my window. So I apologize. Okay. So this quote I really love. I'll just read it out. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And why this quote from Marianne Williamson, which is often credited to Nelson Mandela. And why I love this quote is all about the idea that the more you get to know and understand yourself, the more you unlock and inspire that for other people. The more you learn to self-express, the more you allow other people to self-express, the more authentic you are, the more you invite other people to be authentic. In a self-expressed life, the reason I was saying that, like, you living your life and chasing your purpose is very similar and actually identical in a behavior as you setting standards, boundaries, and expectations of what you want in the world and what matters to you. And that's why this matters so much. The more you get to know this, the more you get to understand yourself, the more that you step into this space, the more that you shine your light, the more you actually become an inspiration and a healing to other people to do the same. So I get really excited about this stuff because, I mean, who wouldn't? Ha! Okay, so now I can step back into this space because I'm ready to rock. All right. So the Q&A box, you can put your questions in that and I will answer that towards the end. So why is it actually quite, I love this picture because it's really like goes against, you know, I've never been an actual dancer, but my friends who were ballet dancers, they certainly could have spoken to this idea that you had to be very poised, you had to be very like concise about your movements, and to go against it like this sort of invites everything. Then what is it about having an internal rebellion? What is it about rebelling that we struggle so much to do? And when I was growing up, I was taught, you know, to do a finance degree, to become an accountant, to become a doctor, to become an engineer, to do anything that made me a good provider. And when I look back at that, I don't, you know, maybe there could be a show of hands as to what you guys feel here, or in the comment box, you could tell me, what were you taught to be? Because I was taught that I needed to do something practical, that I couldn't do a degree in art, that it wasn't until university that I actually did a program in psychology. I took an option in psychology and it was one of my favorite classes, but I didn't actually pursue psychology as a major because I was afraid that I wouldn't make money doing that. And so I'd love to know from you guys, what are some of the other occupations or messages that you received about doing that, about becoming, you know, a doctor or a, you know, whatever it may be. Get married and have children and serve my husband, marry for money, school wasn't suggested, to always do the right thing. Yeah, but then what is the right thing? Get incredible grades, be a doctor, right? Like, isn't it interesting that, like, even make my family proud? What is making your family, what would make them proud? Becoming, you know, somebody who makes a lot of money. For men, we usually become, you know, a provider, take care of your family. But for women, they also, God, don't depend on a man. Make sure you take care of yourself, right? And there's an innate reason that, oh, my high school counselor said I would never make it to college. Like, these are different things that we receive from all sorts of people. And we're gonna, in this workshop tonight, I want to not only take you through how to identify some of these things, but how do you clear them, right? How do you actually get them out of the way and keep the things that are good? Because we get messages from our families that are good, but also we get some messages that aren't so good. So there's a reason that humans have this challenge. If you look at if you have never seen this slide before, that's the brain. And there's 3 layers to the brain. The oldest one in the middle, the reptilian, the limbic system, and the neocortex. And in the oldest part of our brain is very much in charge of fight, flight, freeze. It's the thing that says, like, there's a tiger over there. And our brain has a negativity bias in that we are always looking for threats. And we either put something in a category of opportunity or threat. Within a fifth of a second, your amygdala decides if something is an opportunity or a threat. So before you even decide consciously that it is already decided for you. And some of these things are not practical, right? Like our brain sometimes codes things as a threat that are not actually a threat. Now, of course, it's important because, all of us who are on this webinar today, or if you're watching the recording, all of us on some level must have had a negativity bias. We were looking for the tiger that was going to kill us, and we saw the tiger. That's why we're all here today, because we had survival, right? Our family tree are survivors. We're all on Ancestry.com, and the rest of the people who didn't have a negativity bias are not. And so it's fascinating when you look at the research. If I gave you a piece of negative information about someone, and then I gave you a piece of positive information about someone, your brain would automatically default to negative about them, even though you've received both positive and negative information about them. And that's interesting, right? Because it should be just flat. There should be no base. It should be neutral. You should have no negative bias if you've received 2 pieces of opposing information. But this is a survival thing. We call this a decision heuristic. It's a shortcut to make quick decisions. And that's why we put people into categories. We put people in boxes. We have judgments and biases that are inherited, that fall through generations, and they're not accurate. They're often not accurate. So there's one thing is that we have a negativity bias, and that's why it's really scary to go against the things that our culture or our family or whatever says to us, because we are constantly observing for threats. We're not looking for opportunities. And there's research from Barbara Fredrickson that talks about the evolutionary benefit of positive emotion. Well, the evolutionary benefit of positive emotion is that she called it this broaden and build theory, that it allows our eyes to see more opportunity. When you're in a state of gratitude, you're looking for things. You're seeing opportunities to connect with other people. But when you're in a state of fight, flight, freeze, your vision is very narrow. It's very closed. You're looking for escape routes. You're looking for other threats. Your heart rate is very, it goes up. You start to get sweaty, and you're not able to process as much information in your prefrontal cortex. And so as soon as you put someone in fight, flight, freeze, they're actually not able to process, do challenging problems. And in the research, when they look at workplaces, if someone says to an employee, can I give you some feedback, that's actually been shown to put someone into fight or flight. So it's kind of fascinating, isn't it? So when we look at, let me just slide here. The reason also we're afraid to get exiled or kicked out or like not be part of our tribe or our culture or our clan or whatever it is, our families, is because we have a terrifying fear of loneliness. And the reason I want you guys to all understand this is because we want to separate our biology from what is good for us. Because our biology will say you should always eat sugar, because our biology is like, sugar is great because it's like a drug, but sugar isn't always great for us. It's great for us when we need quick boosts of energy, or we're feeling very depleted. Sugar can really lift us up very quickly, but too much of it, like too much of everything, is bad for us. Just like if you're in a relationship and it's not an open relationship, you're going to have a biological desire and be sexually attracted to other people, but that's not going to be in the best interest of your relationship in your future. So we have to start to separate what is biology from what is smart and good for us. And we're in this space where there is a battle between what is formerly a survival evolutionary based behaviors from what is good for you today in your self-expression and your authenticity. And I often think that we're sort of in this battle today where our souls are craving self-expression. And the most attractive quality in another person is to be authentic, is to feel free. But when you look at the actual data on loneliness and the severe effect it can have on your body, it's the same parts of your brains light up for loneliness as do when you have physical pain in your body. And that's why, like, being fearful of being alone can be very paralyzing. And it's, this sort of idea that of how it alters your immunology is this idea that, there's a couple of theories evolutionarily why this happens, that our brain lights up the same place as physical pain lights up when we're lonely. And it's this idea that, well, if you're not with someone, you might get wounded. So this feeling might make you go seek out someone to go, so you're in a greater group, so you have a less chance of actually getting hurt. But the level of toxicity from loneliness is actually pretty crazy. And I remember reading this study that said the mortality rate for air pollution is 5%, but for loneliness is around 25%. So look at that. Isn't that crazy? And I think that's why when you think about rejection on a state of a relationship perspective can be very painful, of course, but in a state of just in being who you are and self-expressing and pursuing your passions and actually expressing your feelings and your thoughts and your boundaries and your needs and your values, it can feel like you're really going against the grain because you're fearing rejection. Now, I talk all the time about this, but it's really hard to actually get this in our heads, is that when you're afraid that someone else is going to reject you if you self-express, and then you don't, or you want to pursue a dream and you don't because you're afraid no one will love you or no one will accept you, you're actually rejecting yourself. And so the rejection that we fear from them is already felt. And I would theorize that the more aware you become of the lack of self-expressing you're doing, the more I would say that the greater the pain is of the internal self rejection than the actual experience of perceived rejection from people around us. All right, so there's this part of life, let me just switch slides here. And the reason I like this slide, because I like to think of if you're looking at it from the bottom up, that in life at around the ages of 6, 7, from the ages of 0 to 8, you're literally learning how to be a human, right? How to participate in a family. And I talk a lot about messages. If you've never done a webinar before with me, it's really important that we begin to uncover what messages we were sent. But I want you to think about, from the ages of about 0 to 8, what you were taught growing up. Because what happens is there's a moment where who you truly are, you separate from in order to fit in. And essentially what you're doing is you're learning how to become a good little boy or a good little girl, a good part of this family, a good Christian, a good Catholic, a good Muslim, or whatever it is. And you're learning how to become who you need to be in order to survive. And this is biological. Again, you don't know you're doing this as a kid. You're just knowing that you want to mitigate the fights you might cause in your home. You want to increase your chance of survival. You want to fit in your school. You want to make sure you don't cause too much trouble. And what happens is we sort of separate from our souls, and we take this left turn. And so the space between the left side and the right side, the creek delineating this, to me, is the space between who you're pretending to be and who you truly are. And the space between who you're pretending to be and who you are, the greater that gap, the greater the pain you experience. And I like the comment that, I feel so much of what I learned was less what I was told and more what I saw. Remember, messages can be explicit, but they can also be implicit, which means they're not explicitly told to you, they're what you observe. Because of course, a lot of people, when they're raised in their religion says, everyone's loved and accepted to be who they are. And then you do something that goes against that religion or that thought, and you've sinned and you have to go to confession, or you're kicked out of the church or religion, which isn't very unconditionally loving. And then you end up with this huge dissonance between what you were taught and what you're experiencing. That's a whole other can of worms, though. So I want you to start to think about this separation between who you are and who you pretend to be. Because what happens when they look at when you're in states of flow. So the research on flow, the idea of flow states is that a flow state is when an hour goes by and it feels like 5 minutes. When you're doing an activity, so people can get into flow really easily in nature, surfing. Some people do it sewing. Some people do it reading. Some people do it, you can do it making love. You can do it on drugs will bring you flow. And so you can get into flow in tons of different ways. But it's this idea where everything is right with the world, that you're exactly where you need to be, that I'm at one with the music. And when you're in states of flow, the research shows that the front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part that's in charge of creating who you are, the idea of yourself, shuts down, and you're literally in the moment. But remember, if you are pretending to be someone you are not, you are actually never fully present. Because what is happening is your brain is going, who do I need to be in this moment to make this person happy, to not cause too much conflict, to fit in? And you're creating an idea of what you have to say and who you have to be. And what happens is you're never fully in the moment because you're always spending nanoseconds creating the ideal self. But when you are authentic and you are truly who you are, you're present. And you're giving more of you to the people around you because they get to just feel like, I mean, you're just channeling who you are. You don't have to like come up with this elaborate scheme to fit in. And what's beautiful about that is we spend our lives generally reacting to the world, hoping that you like me, I like you. You want this, I want that. Oh, if I do a finance degree, you'll love me. That was me, you know? It's like, if I do a business degree, I'll get approval. But the moment you actually start to go, this is who I am, you force the world to actually respond to you. And the people who won't like what you're doing, they won't stay in your world. And that's okay. That's actually proof that it's working sometimes. You know, I love the idea that when someone says, you've changed, and you're like, good, yeah, fucking I have changed. That's exactly what my whole point was. So I want you to start to see the benefit of getting into an authentic space is that you actually will become more present and you will be not having to produce this self anymore, which takes a lot of fucking work. It takes so much work to pretend to be someone you're not. It's just fucking exhausting. All right. So this concept of who I am, and I think, you know, I put in not in there because I think it's not so much figuring out who you are. It's actually discovering the parts that you created that are not you. And that's why I talk a lot about my idea of like unbecoming, this idea of actually like shedding the shit, shedding the stuff that is not who I am. And the reason we can actually struggle with figuring out who we are is because, you know, if you grew up in a family where you had an alcoholic parent or an addict parent or an angry parent or a parent who wasn't even around, or you had a parent who was narcissistic or sociopathic, or you had a parent with a chronic illness, or you had a family member who had something like that. Like, you know, in the chat box, right? Yes, 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 yes. Like, raise your hand if your experience was something like that in childhood, that you had someone who you had to caretake their needs. Were you on eggshells as a kid? Because if you're on eggshells, that's a big thing. And do you see this? Like, do you see all these hands going up? And for the people watching the recording, the hands, the codependency, still on eggshells, right? Because there's a number of things here, and you know me, I like to go off on some stuff. And I got to be mindful of the time because, you know me, I can get really ripping on some stuff. So the thing is that when you are conditioned, so as a kid, if you grew up with an alcoholic, addict parent, narcissistic, sociopathic, someone who's extremely angry, someone who's scary, someone who's not even around, you have to see that your whole role, and if you took care of your siblings, that's another one, even if you raised yourself, right, because your parents didn't pay attention to you or they were too busy in their own shit, or they were promiscuous or whatever it is you were so busy, or if your mom or dad made you their confidant or their best friend, you're so busy caretaking of other people's needs, or no one is taking care of yours, so you're taking care of yourself, that you never get to fully develop, like you never get to explore things like, who am I? What do I love? What do I want? What's important to me? Because you didn't have a parent who asked you those questions. You spent your childhood figuring that stuff out. You spent your childhood trying to navigate other people. And so what happens is very much as we grow up, we start to pivot around other people. We find partners who need our help. But when it comes to what do you want? What do you need? There's two ways this can happen. One is, especially when you've lost yourself in relationship, is you might not even know who you are. You might never have even thought about that. Your whole life has been spent taking care of other people, especially women. We have taught women to inherently take care of everyone else. Make sure you take care of everyone else. For men, we taught them to be sure that they are the caretaker in terms of providing, but we never asked them what their emotional needs were. So men will often be disconnected from their emotional needs. They'll say, I don't need anything. And you're like, well, how do you feel? And they're like, well, I'm good. And we're like, no, but you're not good. I could tell you're not good, right? And I've been there. I know what that's like. I had to learn to develop the language behind that. And this is why it's really important to begin to just connect with that truth. On some level, no matter your experience, it's valid. No matter your experience, if you really are in this place where you're like, man, I have never really fully pursued my dreams. I've always wanted to be whatever it is that you've wanted to be, or I've always wanted to find what my purpose is. But, I have a number of people that I've worked with where I'm like, what's your passion? What's your purpose? And they're like, I don't know. And before I was 27, I never thought about my purpose when I was on the planet. I never thought about that. It wasn't until. So I grew up in a Catholic home. My mom's Irish. She came from Dublin. My dad is from Canada. He was married before my mom. And so he was divorced when they met. And I have a sister who's from my dad's first marriage, who I love and grew up with as a full, normal sister. And what's interesting, though, is when I had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I was saying before that I wanted to be what was important, what I was taught, to be a doctor, to be an engineer, to be an accountant, but what I realized as soon as I got to know those different professions, they work their fucking ass off. And I was like, shit, I don't want to work my life away. And I actually had a job when I graduated. I had a job with a company called Oracle. And then the tech industry crashed, so I didn't have the job anymore, so I never even got to start. And I was working that summer after I graduated, and my dad worked in the hospitals. So I went and worked with a rep one day, a pharmaceutical rep. And when I worked with him, I was like, holy shit, you get paid to do this? This is crazy. So I was like, yeah, I'll do that. So I became a sales rep. And it wasn't until I had my engagement end when I was 27 that I actually thought to myself, like, I was taught to get married by age 30 or 27 to 30, have kids by 30. And when I was 27, I was engaged, and I ended my engagement. I was like, why did I get engaged? Like, I didn't want to get engaged. That doesn't make sense to me. And so I started to ask all these questions, like, why do humans do things they don't want to do? Why did I pursue a finance degree? I fucking hated finance. I never touched finance again in my life after that. And I thought to myself, like, what am I really passionate about? And I read this book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And if you haven't read that, I'm going to send out the link to it. So I'm just going to write it down. And I read it because all of a sudden I started to think, in the book it talked about, like, any man or woman, right, who has a why can get through anything, can get through any what. And there was a line in that book that really struck a chord with me, which was, to live is to suffer, but to survive is to find meaning in your suffering. And I don't really have that much of an idea of, I don't think that we're meant to suffer, because I think that's a very, negative view of the world. But I think to find meaning in your suffering is actually so beautiful. And I think that the greatest pain that we go through in life is believing that we both deserved a different past and deserve to be in a different place today. Because if you believe that you deserved a different past, you're comparing your life to this other childhood that doesn't exist, and no one has a perfect childhood. Even what you think is seemingly a perfect childhood, those people have been through a lot too. They've just been through different things. And, you know, it's the other side of it is, if you believe that you should be somewhere different than you are today, you will live in pain because you don't accept where you are. And if you don't accept everything in your life as it is, just as it is, you don't have to make a judgment about it. You just go, okay, like, I am where I am. I connect to that. I haven't always been good at things. I've said some stupid things. I've done some stupid things. I've hurt people. I've hurt myself. Okay. And you just feel the pain of that truth. I had to do that. I had to really I've had to have, I don't know for another term, but a lot of come to Jesus moments that have been like, I'm not doing my best and I have to do my best. And that's when I made the rule in my life that I would always live at my highest level of knowledge, that I would always become the version of me that needed to show up after I made a mistake. And what that did was it allowed me to integrate the wisdom of my experiences. And it became a very, now making that commitment is a very, you're taking a large responsibility for your life. You know, when you can finally say, okay, everything that came into my life, okay, so just bear with me here, because here's what I promise you. If you integrate these principles, you will love your life and love yourself. And if you love yourself, you won't need someone else to give you that. You'll already have it, and no one can take it away from you. But the point isn't to not need people or to not want to be loved by other people. It's just not to determine that the love you have for yourself comes and goes with them. Fuck that. And this is the separation from needing other people to choose you to validate that you're worthy of being chosen, to, if I choose me, no one has to choose me to prove that I'm worthy of being chosen. So then their choice of you doesn't come with a responsibility to give you your self-worth. This is the secret contract we create in relationship. Is like, if you choose me, then if you leave me, then you take me with you. And do you see how that powerless that is? How fucking powerless that is? If you give that away, you receive love from people and give it away if they come and go. You're not in charge of how you feel about you. But the moment you become your authentic self, you are the birth of your own self-worth. You are the birth of your own rejections, your own abandonments, and everything. Then you take this level of responsibility where you go, okay, I'm ready to fucking live. And because I'm ready to fucking live, what I'm going to say is that everything that got into my life up until this moment is here to serve me in some way. And in some way, I said yes to it. Everything that is on my plate currently, I said yes to. And when you just say that and you go, okay, let's show me what you got, universe, right? Like, that's what I started to do as I went, I surrender, show me the way. Like, show me the way. I'm listening. So I want you in the box to just, in the chat, just to be like, I'm in. Like, fucking commit to this. Commit to this shit. Like, no one should leave this webinar not fucking showing up for their lives anymore. Like, you can't, especially if we're all agreeing, like, I am living at my highest level of knowledge. This is an agreement all of us leave this goddamn night with. Like, that's the most important change you will make in your life is, I'm responsible for my own happiness, not you. That's not your job. But I'm also not going to let you fuck around with me anymore, right? Like, I'm not going to let you determine that I feel bad about myself because I let you treat me shitty. No more. Like, don't accept scraps of love. Don't accept scraps of behavior. Like, none of that shit. And if you're scared, that's good. Scared is good because it means you're on your fucking edge. And when you're on your edge, that means you're creating something new that you don't know what the other side is. You don't know what's going to happen. And I fucking love that. That's the best point to be in, is where I'm scared and uncertain. Great. Because you've never lived this moment before. And look, everyone is in the same place as you, right? Like, all of us are in the same place. Like, look at this goddamn chat box. It's like, yep, scared, holy hell, I'm scared. Petrified. Petrified also could be a fossil reference. So I wouldn't become a stone. That wouldn't be as great. We want to loosen you up, but not in the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? All right, okay. Crying happy tears, amazing. I love that. Okay, so you know that I had this path where I thought, okay, so at 27, my engagement ends and I start to study relationships because I'm like, holy shit, how the fuck did I get here? How did I get so disconnected from who I am into this place? It was like not just happened at 27. I all of a sudden saw that I was on autopilot for about 7 years and I didn't even know. And my partner that I was with at the time, she for sure didn't get to know the real me, the true me, because I was so disconnected from my pain, my grief, my sadness. And so I started to study relationships because I wanted to understand them. I wanted to understand humans on a much deeper level. Before that, I was in sales, right? So I knew how to understand humans and to change their behavior, but to change their behavior to get them to buy something, not to change their behavior for good, to have them like change their behavior, and like we're doing today, right? We're all going to change our behavior. And I was much more in a manipulative sort of way. So I started to study relationships, and I got to tell you, I was reading this woman's writing, and I really liked her writing. So it was about 5 years later, that I decided I was going to start writing on relationships. It took me a while to get authentic. So this is why I'm giving you a fast track to all this shit I had to figure out for a long time. So I wrote her a message on LinkedIn and I said, hey, I really respect your writing. Would you mind reading this? And she said, yeah, I will. And she read my writing and she said to me, look, the writing's pretty good, but it's a little crass. And I don't think people will read it because it's too crass. And I thought, shit, okay. So I stopped writing. And the problem with that is I made what she was expecting in her, what her view of good writing was, became what my view of good writing was. So I made what she thought about my writing more important than my need for self-expression. I made what she thought about what I wrote, I made that more important than my need to be truthful and honest and authentic. It actually ended up being the first article I ever published about a year later. So it took me about a year to realize that her opinion should not be my opinion of me. And you've probably read me say, read something I've written about that, where I said, like, never allow what someone else thinks of you to become what you think of you. And remember that thoughts thought over again become beliefs. But it's interesting because someone else's thought of you, if you adopt, will become your thought of you, which will then become what you believe about you. And that's not okay. Okay, so there's a really great TED Talk that I'm going to share with you, not right now because of the interest of time, but I'm going to have some follow-up exercises that you guys are going to do as well. I want you to watch a TED Talk called Our School's Ruining Our Creativity, if you haven't seen it. All right, so I want you all to close your eyes. So no need to look at the chat window. I want you all to close your eyes. And I want you to take a deep breath. And I want you to just recognize that you are exactly where you need to be right now. I want you to recognize that this is the perfect moment. You're in the perfect place. Wherever you are watching this, and we're connected by the beauty of the internet all over the world. And I want you to think about your childhood. I want you to think about the messages you received about work, about your career, about self-expression. I want you to keep your eyes closed. Keep your eyes closed here. We're going to take time after to write, but I want you to keep your eyes closed now. I want you to stay present. And I want you to think about the people who were around you, your family, your caretakers, anyone you grew up with, your school counselors, your priests, your religious leaders, your whatever it is, your aunts, your uncles, your grandmas. And I want you to think about what images or opinions you got about the area of success. What did they tell you about success? What did they tell you about career? What careers did they tell you were valid or appropriate? What messages were, gender messages were you sent about work and roles in the house? And I want you to allow yourself to just let this flow. You don't need to hold on to a memory. Don't worry, you're going to remember everything you need to remember. Did you get the message that your work was supposed to be full of joy, or did you get that it's supposed to be filled with struggle? Were you supposed to work for contribution, or just work because you had to? And when you declared what you wanted to do with your life when you were young, did people say things like, don't be silly, that'll never work. You'll never make money doing that. You have to be special to do that. And as what messages did your guidance counselors at school tell you? What did they say when you talked to them about what you wanted to do with your life? What were you modeled? What were your parents like with work? Did they have a steady job? Did they move from job to job? Was it stable? Did they do a career for their lifetime? Did they do what they loved, or did they do what they had to do? Was it for joy or for sacrifice? And think about if you had any emotional experiences that occurred in the area of work or career. Did someone you know get fired? Did your parent get fired? Did someone you know go bankrupt? Were people always talking about a lack of money or an abundance of money? Did you have a friend who quit school? So you did. Did you have a friend who went into a certain career? So you did. I want you to think about all of that. And then I want you to come back to right now. I want you to grab your pen. And I want you to write out the messages, both good and bad, because they could be good and bad, supportive or not supportive. You want to write them all. And I just want you to start clearing. I just want you to start writing on your piece of paper everything that you can think of of messages you received. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to do that. And the reason this is important to do is because it's uncovering the secret messages and not so secret that guide why you do what you do. So just take a couple moments to write it out. And to remind you, like some of the ones I was given, become a doctor, make $100,000 a year. That was actually a big one I received. Although with inflation, that's probably a lot more now. Tech wasn't around. I probably would have been told to go into tech. But the art's always got this shit hand, You'll never make money as an artist. You'll never make money doing what you love. That's foolish. I got become a good provider, be a good father, and a good husband, which is, there's positive messages to that. But lost in that, if it's not explained, is that a good husband can be a great stay-at-home dad if the mother has, or, I'm talking very heteronormatively. So, if one partner is a great provider and the other one's a great caretaker, that can be found in other ways. You can contribute to the home in so many ways. You can contribute to yourself and your life in so many ways. The other thing is we sent women the message to not depend on a man, never depend on anyone, but then find a man who makes a lot of money. I've heard that message. It's just as easy to marry a rich man as a poor man. And that can be a very confusing message, especially for a man who's on the other side of that, who's like, but I thought they wanted a good man. And they're like, yeah, but he should be rich too. Oh, shit. But if we all can get on board with this on this webinar, but just in general in life, that emotion is really the currency of the future. Your ability to understand yourself and show up for yourself, but still be able to need other people. That is a beautiful balance, to not lose yourself in love, but to not avoid love because you're afraid you'll lose yourself. How do you hold on to you and love someone else? That's an art, that's a dance where you have to learn that you lose that's losing me. Oh, I need me back. Like where you're starting to learn that dance. That's why a boundary is movable. A wall is not. A boundary, you can say, oh, actually, you know what? I'm okay with this, and I'm not okay with that. You can move them. So in the chat box, can you guys share some of the things that came up with you? Like for you, is there any like massive awarenesses that you went, holy shit, like I can't believe that's why I've never expressed my art, or that's why I've never. So in the chat box, if you could just write down, what are some of the things that you just realized? And, you know, when I started to do this, I started to realize all the messages I was sent about just being a man. Image at all costs. Children seen, not heard. Yeah, that one's a big one. I've heard that before. Ugh, that breaks my heart because that often makes people very silent. Artists don't make money. Yeah, work because you have to. The more money you make, the more you hate your job. Isn't that fucked? You can't change your mind. Work hard no matter how you're feeling, self-expression. Always wear makeup, attract a man. My parents' fears became my fears. Yes, always, right? I was told what to do. I felt suggestions weren't reflective of greatness. Women get married, have kids, get divorced, and then, right? And then follow their dreams. Low self-esteem. I was not entitled to opinion. Always look your best. Be quiet, too naughty. No daughter of mine is going to wear a police uniform. Ah, men always cheat, yet she was. Oh, your mom. Ironic, right? Don't rely on a man. We came into this country to give you opportunity. Don't waste it. The guilt, right? So I want you to separate, you know, who you are from what they taught you. You have to recognize, like, as this chat box is also going to be sent to you. And what I want you to get from this chat box, you know, amongst the such beautiful messages we receive and the not so beautiful ones, is that everyone struggles with this shit. We all come from this. We all have confusing messages. That takes too much schooling, and school's not really your thing. Like all these ways that we shit on people's dreams, right? And they're often the very people that told us to dream. That's what I think is so ironic. Or the guilt of like wanting something different. You know, like if you're in a relationship that doesn't satisfy you and your partner doesn't want to change, people will say, but you already have a great relationship. And you're like, actually, but because they don't have one, they say you should be grateful for this thing. So remember that in this, who you are is often who you needed to be. So let me just get here. So I think there's this really big aspect of feeling safe to be yourself and maybe getting paid for it, how you can do that. I have another poll here. I just have to figure out how to get to it. Man, these polls are killing me with, let me just get this thing. All right, there we go. There we go, launch poll. The reasons I've held back my true self are, you could pick more than one. What are the reasons that you've held back your true self? Can you guys see that? Oh, there we go, okay. I can't wait to share this with you. It's so interesting. All right, I'll give you 10 more seconds. 7, 6, 5. I'm liking the high level of participation, my friends. We're crushing it here. Okay, here you go. Let's look at these results. I've been afraid of failing. I get that. That's a big one. But isn't it ironic that when we don't start, we fail ourselves? The second one, I'm afraid my family would reject me. Yeah, that's big too, right? Because these are all survival based. I'm worried I'll lose my friends. That's a very realistic one, especially, you know, if your friends have different behaviors, different choices, they don't self-express as much. I'm scared to actually succeed. Huge. That was really big for me. I used to sabotage a lot before, so I couldn't succeed. And I wasn't allowed to express as a kid. I just love, like, when you see this, you see how valid your experience is. So, I'll just, ooh, I had it. No, come on. Did I get it? Damn it. Okay, there we go. So, I want you to close your eyes again. So I want you to, yeah, I had a little bit of progress on that one, didn't I? So I want you to close your eyes again. And I want you to come back here. So take a deep breath. And I want to do these exercises for you so that you can experience some freeing, some clearing. We want to clear some things. It's kind of like clearing your throat, right? So that you can speak your voice. The same idea as clearing these messages. So close your eyes, take a deep breath. So I want to imagine that the following people are in front of you. Your parents, your guardians, maybe even your kids, your grandkids if you have them, your close friends, teachers, spouses, religious leaders, anyone who had an influence on you in your life. And I want you to hear them saying to you, starting with your name. So I want you to hear this. So whatever your name is, start with that. We knowingly and unknowingly have influenced you with our own opinions and ways of being. These ways came from our own past conditioning, and we realized that none of our opinions were necessarily true or right for you. We apologize for any hurt this may have caused you. However we showed it or didn't show it, we love it, we love you, and we want what's best for you. It is now your turn to take your place in this world. We want you to live your life your way. You are free from having to please us. You're free and encouraged to be you and to live from your heart and do what you love and be your true, authentic self. I want you to open your eyes and, see when you comment, if only, right? Like if in your brain you're going, if only they told me that. They don't need to. By experiencing the vision of it, you can allow yourself that freedom. Because if you're waiting for them to do it, you'll be waiting your whole life, because people can't do what they're not capable of doing. You have to remember the compassion that we expect from other people, they often never got themselves. When you start to see your parents as the children of parents, you will have compassion for them. But that doesn't mean tolerance, right? That doesn't mean, like, those are the words they wish someone had spoken to them. And when we speak them to you, you can experience them and you can allow them to be freeing. So connect to them. And now what I want you to do, now that you have full permission, is I want you to write down. And I want you to think about it. I just want you to write. Let your pen fucking write. Do not pick your pen up. Go. I want you to clear. What are you done doing? What are you going to let go of? What have you been holding on to? And if you want to figure out what you're holding on to, just figure out what you're not starting, right? Because you're holding on to something that doesn't allow you to start something. So write, clear everything, 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 everything. I want you to just keep writing it. And if it doesn't come to you right anyways, I'm going to stop this. For me, when I did this exercise, and I have to still do it sometimes, right? Because you're always figuring out new parts of you. Is when I first did this exercise, it was, I'm done doing what everyone wants me to do. I'm done being who people want me to be. I'm done pretending I want to do this other thing. I'm done pretending I don't want to shine and share and care. I'm done not being emotional. I'm done not being sensitive. I'm done not sharing my feelings. I'm done not sharing myself. And that statement in the chat, I have what I've named failure to start. I'm fine when I actually start working. I'm filled with ideas, but never start most of them. I get in my own way, not other people. So you're going to write and just start. Because you've even named it so that you don't have to. You identify with, I have failure to start. What happens if you have, I can only start? Think about that. Imagine if, man, I have what this thing is called, I can't help but start. It's this crazy disorder that just makes me start really cool fucking projects. And what if we're holding on to this pressure of continuing to help our family financially with decisions they aren't capable on their own? What if it's not something that you can stop helping with? You can create more boundaries around it. And perhaps you can ask for support and help from someone else. Often, like I've certainly seen this and experienced it with friends. if our family, we support them so much that they don't have to create their own independence and make their own decisions. You know, often people have debilitating things that allow them to control other people's behaviors too. There's a lot of little manipulative ways that we manipulate and control other people's behavior with needs. And so just starting to check in with what boundaries can I have? What I'm done letting people decide what I choose and not choose. You know? And this is separating from I'm going to be selfish. This is actually just self-care. I'm done not being me. Fuck yeah, right? All right. And so now that you're done clearing, I want you to write, what do I want to bring more of in my life? What do I want more of? What do I want to create? Who do I want to be? I'm done not letting people nurture me. Yeah, done not letting people love you. Done explaining myself and justifying my choices. Yeah, you don't have to. Someone wants to, you know, they can come at you with a curious question. I'm done living in fear of losing love. Of course, because the only love you lose is your own when you do that. This is beautiful. So I want you to write, what is it that you want more of? When I first did this, I was done, you know, I was done not being me. What I wanted more of was more passion, more joy, more excitement in my life. More people around me who were doing cool shit. I want more of living in the present. I want more peace. And remember that you're not really ever going to get rid of fear. But what you want to do is not let fear choose for you. Because fear is still going to be there sometimes, right? Because fear is important. Fear, you know, I'm afraid to cross the road when cars are coming in New York. That's important. That's survival. And I'm going to let it choose for me in those moments. But fear of rejection, the fear is still going to exist because it's biological. It's just not letting the fear of rejection cause you to reject yourself, right? So it's what the fear does for you. You don't want the fear to choose for you. I want more nature. I want more honesty. I want more vulnerability. So you have to be more authentic. You have to be more honest. You have to be more vulnerable. You can't ask for other people what you are not doing. More raw moments. A lot of fucking raw moments here, right? Okay, so you'll get copies of all this, and I'm going to send you copies of all the questions too. So this is actually one of my favorite slides. What other people think of you is none of your business. When you allow other people's opinions to become your own opinions of yourself, then you'll never do anything. But if you can see that when someone's opinion, because someone can say to you, listen, I don't agree with what you're doing. And you can go, cool. Fuck yeah, awesome, man. Thanks for sharing. When I first started writing, I have this friend who's a really good writer. He's a really nice guy too. But he's really offside, like super crass. And he said to me one night, it was when I first started writing, so I was like really terrified about what my friends would think about it. And, you know, I grew up playing sports and around guys, but very thoughtful guys. So he was being thoughtful. He was coming from a good place, right? So you assume that. And he said to me, he goes, what's going on with you? You know, your writing is really sensitive and really emotional. And I think you should write like more like some website called Cracked. He's like, I think you should write more like really offside funny stuff. And I was like, cool. And he was like, what do you mean cool? And I was like, that's good. Thank you for sharing that. And he's like, well, are you going to? And I was like, oh, you're confused. And he's like, what do you mean I'm confused? And I'm like, oh, you think I write for you? No, I write for me. Like I write for my own authentic self-expression. I don't write to get your applause. Because if you do anything to get other people's applause, you're doing the same thing. It will hinder, you'll only write content that gets applause. You know, my sister said to me once that if a third of people don't hate you, then you're not doing great work. And I was like, well, does it have to be a third? That seems like a lot. I want to be liked by more people. And so it's really starting to see that if you start to do things or post or do anything to get the likes of other people, you're still playing into the need for their love and affirmation and self-worth. And that's why it's so simple on something like Instagram to post a picture of your body, or to post a picture, or even to post words, right? For me, and to get affirmation and love. But it's such a slippery slope, because then you start to get attached to the thing that gets you love. But, I made this because, when I first started writing on Instagram, I realized that I could write a female empowerment quote and get, all the jam, right? I could post a Nayyirah Waheed quote and it would fly. But what I started to do was make a promise to myself that every post that I ever make, the only intention is to change one life. And so the moment it gets one like, it's changed one life in my experience, right? And as soon as I changed to that, what happened is I started to share even more authentically. And so when you can begin to do that, just to start to share from this authentic place of whether you like it or not, here's my truth. But what we start to learn is, instead of, because a lot of people can be very outspoken with their truth, they can be very harsh, and they'll say, well, that's just who I am. Deal with it. And that's a wall. That's not wanting feedback. You still have to be open to feedback. You still have to be open to hearing how you can improve, to hearing how you can shape your delivery. Because if, when we first practice sharing our needs and feelings with our partners, if we've never done that, then we can bulldoze them onto them. But the more you practice your language and delivery, you change how it's received. And that's just important, that you're always connecting and being this ongoing, moving project, that your identity is constantly moving, right? And the thing is you're not going to eliminate what other people think. What other people think is going to affect you. You're not going to eliminate that. But what you're going to do is you're not going to allow it to shift your truth. You might allow it to change how you communicate your truth, but your truth is not going to change. So the idea of pleasing others, remember, can come from a manipulative place. Because when you want to please other people, you're doing it to get their love and to keep the peace. And so in a way, you're manipulating them. You have to start to see that the overt giving and the overt pleasing is also signing up for a role. They're never really experiencing the authentic version of you. And that's something that can shift. That's an important thing to shift. People pleasers have people who like someone to take care of them, right? But at the same time, we're matched perfectly with them. And in order for them to shift and change and to show up for themselves, you need to shift and change and show up for yourself. So part of the role that gave you power was to please. Part of their role was to receive and to take, because then they never really have to fully show up for love and take responsibility for themselves either. So there's this matching that happens. How can you tell if someone's manipulating you covertly? Because it will feel slippery. All right, so let's rock. So let's get out of our own way. So this is really important, because often we're our greatest saboteurs, right? I'm a master covert manipulator. See, this is good. This is really important to start to check in with yourself and to really dig in and take responsibility for what you can be doing. Okay, so I want you to close your eyes again. Okay, this is great. Whew. Remember, we're exactly in the right place, and take what you get from this and leave what you don't need. And that's perfect. That's exactly what you should do in everything in life. And I want you to connect to the part of you that has been afraid to be authentic, the part of you that has been afraid to speak up, the part of you that's fearful of expressing yourself, the part of you that's afraid to fail, the part of you that's most critical of yourself, the part of you that sabotages and limits your potential in love, in life. And I want you to see that part of you in front of you. And you can imagine that part of you in any way, maybe with a rain cloud over the head or something. And I'm doing it as you're doing it. And I want you to imagine that part of you speaking to you. in a game starting with your name. I'm sorry that I held you back, knowingly and unknowingly. I'm sorry that my fear of not being loved by those around us and not being accepted held us back from fully being ourselves. I'm sorry that I made the fear of failure more important than the possibility of joy and success and living from our heart. And I'm so sorry that I haven't let us be fully seen. I won't get in the way anymore. You must live your life for you, for us. I won't get in the way anymore. I'll help. And if I make any noise or share my opinion, no, it's just because I'm scared. But you have to always keep moving forward and living from your heart. It's time. And I want you to open your eyes in. It's really important to recognize that the part of you that sabotages anything, that doesn't allow you to fully share, that, blows up relationships or sabotages work or quits before you ever start. It's so important to recognize that that has been a survival method in order to not fail. You fail, or you blow it up, or you get in the way, or you start a fight, or you choose people who aren't great for you, or you choose jobs that are not challenging, or tasks that you know you'll succeed at or fail at. Just to recognize that you've done that and to just connect it is just to see that the part that does that is fully survival based. And that is why we need to be compassionate to that part of us. We all see the little child in us, right? Watching this chat thread, I see a child who just wants to please or who doesn't want to fail, and that is recognizing that this little kid is often driving the car. I wasn't a good driver at 14, 15, 16. My girlfriend might argue that I'm not a great driver today, but it's being able to recognize that they're not even equipped to be driving the car in these experiences. They're saying, let's not do that thing. Let's not love that person. Let's pick a bad partner. Let's not share our feelings. Let's blame it on them. Let's reject them before they reject us. Let's do all these things because if you don't listen to me, we're going to end up maybe happy, but it will be unfamiliar. And so do you see how when we stepped earlier and we go, I'm fucking in, I'm in, I'm in, I'm in, and everyone goes, I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared. It's because we're on the edge of what's possible. And when you can get out of your own fucking way, you can start to experience what true living is. And it can be as simple as finding this courageous moment that goes, I'm scared. Or saying to our partner, I feel disconnected. And that is the most bridging statement you can ever make. But even to ourselves to say like, okay, I'm going to pick a thing. I'm going to pick step one. And we'll get to that though. So it's really important that we begin to get to know our own hearts and to live from them. I'm going to give you an exercise to do after, because I want you to actually get to know. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through some questions so that you can actually get to know who you are and what you might love. And so I'm going to give you this exercise to take home with you, right? Like to give to people. And I want you to do it. What we're going to do is after, I'm going to have some follow-up emails so that we can maybe do something like a Facebook Live, or a Facebook Live would be better for everyone who's on here. And we can actually talk about some of these things. So don't worry, I'll share that later. And that's all included. I want to do that as follow-up because I think it's important that we all have accountability and you guys can connect in some way on that Facebook group. So we'll send a private link out for a private group. Okay, so I better write a note to do that because let's be honest, that is going to fall off my brain if I don't. So I want you to reach out to 3 people that you know and know you well, and I want you to ask them, what are my greatest strengths? And these can be natural gifts, talents, learned skills, or abilities. What do I do best? And what would you consider to be my gift? So I'm going to send that out. Okay, so what I want you to do is grab your pen. And I want you to just explore this. Just explore this. If you're having a hard time finding an answer, trust me that it just sometimes takes time, and to allow yourself just to write something. Just allow yourself to write the first thing that comes to mind. And I often say to people when I'm working with them, like, allow yourself to write fucking banana. It doesn't matter. Just practice writing something. Because when you do that, you don't let the I don't know get in the way. I don't know is just an answer and a strategy to not have to fucking do something. And people will do that all the time. They go, I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, you know. Like, do you like chocolate? Well, yeah. There you go. So you do know some shit. So you just have to start. And what you allow is, remember I said to you before, if you grew up in this experience where you weren't allowed to self-express, where no one would have listened, or you're busy caretaking other people's needs, actually figuring out what you like is actually like, holy shit, I'm allowed to like shit. I'm allowed to want shit I want. Remember when you're a kid and your parents are like, oh, you know what? You're going to have to eat these vegetables. And you're like, but I don't like those vegetables. And they're like, no, but cooked carrots are great. And I was like, fuck cooked carrots. I don't like cooked carrots. And then they were like, but you have to eat them. Same with Brussels sprouts. I had to eat that shit all the time. Now I don't eat that shit, right? So you're allowed to do the same here. We're not going to force anything upon you. You get to decide. Okay. So here's the first one. So I want you to write this down. I just want you to practice. So commit to this. Show up fucking fully in this moment. All right. The things that I am good at doing that come easily to me and for which I always have had a knack for are. So just write out, what was it? For me, it was, now if I'm being playful, I want you to be playful with this too. I would say that I had a knack for having fun. For sports, I really enjoyed sports. I enjoyed playing soccer. I enjoyed playing tag. That was always a fun game. What came easily to me? Meeting strangers, having conversations, parties. I was really good at parties. Can those come easily to you? All right, the next one. And just keep your pen going. I'm skilled at doing. And that could be a learned skill. That could be a natural skill. Could be math. Could be anything. Others would say, I am good at or an expert in. So when I did this exercise, I was told that I was good at understanding people. I was good at telling the truth, which came with a caveat that sometimes I used to share too much of my opinion. If you didn't see my report card from growing up, that was feedback I got from my principal, or from my teacher. Sometimes Mark feels the need to share unsolicited advice. Okay, so I'll repeat those. The things I'm good at doing that come easily to me and for which I've always had a knack for are, I am skilled at doing, and others would say I'm good at or an expert in. And I'm going to send these to you guys, so don't worry, because I want to make sure that I'm honoring your time too. The natural talents I have that I may or may not be using are, the natural talents I have that I may or may not be using are. If I had to teach something, I could teach. And you know what? We can all teach something. There is no doubt in my mind. There's a great video, well, a talk from Alan Watts, who's a philosopher, where he says, everything you're good at, someone else wants to get good at. Doesn't matter what it is. And that's very true. I needed to hear that when I heard it. Someone could call me to get my assistance or my opinion on. And then finally, and remember, I'm going to send these out because you would want to go through these more than once because they'll allow you to unlock more and more things and to just play. Like, you have to do this from a very playful thing. For the perfectionist watching this, there's no right way. So you're going to have to find it. There, you can't get an A in this. You can't get 100. You can't get 0. You just want to play. Write down noodle. I don't give a shit. You can write down anything you want, and you won't get it wrong. What did you dream about? Noodles. Perfect. Who doesn't like noodles? Yeah, you'll get a PDF of these, and you can print them out. I promise. Okay. List what you have ever dreamed of doing or being, now or in the past, especially as a child, before other opinions became important to you. So list everything you dreamed of doing or being, especially as a kid. Remember as a kid how much we wanted to do anything? And you tell your parents, like, I want to be a superhero. And they'd be like, you could be a superhero. And then when you're like 8, you're like, I want to be a superhero. And they're like, that's not realistic. You're like, what? You just told me. All right, so it shows you how much things can shift. Just because they start to want to protect us from failing, which someone did for them. Or they want to remind us that it's likely we're going to fail if they always failed, or someone told them that too. That's why you start to see that we get caught in cycles of poverty. We get caught in cycles of types of careers and work. You know, we get caught in cycles because beliefs are hereditary. When you're a little kid and your parents tell you things about rich people or poor people or jobs or careers or beliefs, they're all things that they believe are the rules of how life is supposed to work. And we live in a time where we have access to more opportunity than we ever have. We have access to more freedoms, which is unfortunately not true for everybody. You know, and that's our work of us living our authentic lives and creating is the way that we can help other people live that too. Okay, so don't worry, you're going to get a copy of all that stuff. So this really idea, I love this saying, to turn your mess into your message, to like take what it is that has really been a struggle in your life and turn it into your skills. You know, for me, I wanted to learn about relationships for myself. And then as I was learning about them, I was like, holy shit, why is no one teaching this? Why is no one telling the truth about relationships? And so I started to write about them. And, you know, ultimately, I see it as you become the teacher you needed. You become the teacher you needed because no one is giving you the information that you need specifically for you to grow. So you go out and gather it. And you see this all the time with people with their health, that their doctor doesn't provide them with the right answer. So they go through like hundreds of thousands of different modalities and books and gather info. And then they write a book about what they learned. Or they go and teach that thing. They come up with their own method. And this is what different professions are, you know? And this is why it's so important that you can see that you can take your greatest struggles and you can turn them into teaching. So keep your pen going, and I'm going to send these to you guys, but let's just have fun and play here. What are some of the life challenges and hardships and issues, obstacles and pains that you've faced? You write them down. What are some of them? I'm going to give you another exercise to do at home. And it is to write down everything you've been through, to write down what was the wisdom that you accumulated from it, and then to tear off the side of the experience and to burn it and to keep the wisdom. It's a powerful exercise. I'll send you a worksheet with that exercise too. Okay, so what are some of life's challenges, hardships, issues, or obstacles and pains you've faced? you're going to be unlocking your best self all up in here, right? Which of these were you able to overcome? Or are you currently overcoming? Which I would say some of it is always an ongoing experience, right? And how did you overcome it? And then, how do you believe you could help others overcome similar issues? So what are some of the challenges and hardships you've had? What ones have you overcome or are you currently overcoming? How did you overcome them, or how are you overcoming them? And how do you believe you could help others overcome similar issues? Remember, you don't have to be everyone's teacher. You just have to be someone's teacher. And when I first wanted to start, my coach said to me, the irony is you think your gifts are for you. So you're afraid to start because you think they're for you. You're afraid that you're going to package them wrong or say the wrong fucking thing or do. And he's like, but the trick is that every moment you don't start, you don't help someone who needs you. So your fear of starting is actually not allowing you to give the gift that you were given through your experiences to the person who needs them now. And I thought to myself, wow, what an immense level of responsibility that is, to see that these are the gifts that I have that I'm afraid to share. And now I'm letting down other versions of me, younger versions of me. And that puts an immense responsibility on starting the work. So in the interest of time, I'm going to give you some other ones too that I'm going to send to you. And so the one is passions. So what excites you about the world and about people? What gets you, revved up and fired up and triggered? What cause or aspect in the world do you strongly believe in? What would you stand up for or fight for? What angers you about what's happening in the world? What would you fight against? And if you could talk to any group of people and shake them up, wake them up, who would you talk to and what would your message be? These are just different things I want you to start to think about. And you're going to get a copy of these, but I want you to start thinking about them. Utilizing your natural talents, passions, and beliefs, how could you start to serve people, help them, the environment, or the planet? Because then you start to change what is your work into what is your purpose, because it becomes contributory. And I really am a firm believer that I used to say your tribe shouldn't ruin your vibe, but the word tribe, there's a lot of controversy on the word tribe, and I have to appreciate that, in some sense, for some people, it's very triggering that it's cultural appropriation, and that's fair. We don't get to decide when someone else is hurt. And I like the idea that your clan shouldn't ruin your jam, right? And the idea of this is that the fastest way you will ever grow is to surround yourself with people who want to do the things you want to do and who are already doing them. If you want to learn from other people, learn from people who are already doing what you want to do. Learn from people who are creating what you want to create. Learn from people who are already in a place where you want to get to. And that way you get to shortcut, in a sense, although there are no shortcuts in life, you get to fast track because you can learn from all the failures they had. You can learn from all the things they went through. And so if you want to change, grow, evolve, have different choices, different behaviors, then you often have to change who you surround yourself with. That doesn't mean you have to not be friends with people anymore or not, but sometimes it does. And for example, this is a real simple example, is that if you currently do drugs and you don't want to do drugs anymore and you stop doing them and you still hang out with the people who do drugs, you're likely going to get pulled back into drugs. And your choice to not do drugs is going to challenge their own desire for sobriety or their own pain, they're going to be afraid that the choice you're making, they desperately want to make, but it's easier for them to drag you back down than to rise and meet you. And most of us allow ourselves to be dragged down. And what we don't see is that when you invite people to rise and meet you, you're inviting them to show up with a higher quality behavior. And we've already said on this webinar that we are going to rise to our highest level of knowledge. We're going to rise up and show up at a way that we best know how. Well, if you already know that you're doing your best and feeling your best when you're not doing these things, then when you start doing these things, you're choosing to hurt yourself. And that hurts more because now you have this knowledge of how you could change your life. And this is why I think that shame and guilt are such powerful emotions. Because the moment you learn something about your past, about your childhood, about your life, about a behavior, about the way you use words, about anything, about even in this moment when you're going, holy shit, I have this authentic version of myself that is craving to show up and I keep failing him or her. I keep not starting. I keep abandoning me. I keep rejecting myself. Now you can go, holy shit, I know that I have a new behavior that is being invited in mine. That's what shame is saying. Whenever we experience shame, is we're literally just learning that there's a better choice and behavior available to us. And instead, what we do is we turn away from the shame and we go, I don't want to pay attention to this. I'll just ignore it. The pain and the shame are still there, so we drink to ignore it. We have sex to ignore it. We become addicts of fitness, of love, of anything, just to ignore this learning. And we chase these highs to not face this low. But this low is just saying, don't do that thing. Choose a better behavior. Become a better version of yourself. And when you do that, life becomes a lot easier. So you want to invite yourself to find people who are already where you want to be and people who want to create that. And you can do that by creating a mastermind with friends. Pick up a group of 4 people. When everyone joins the Facebook group, you can find 2, 3, 4, 5 other people and just say, hey, you want to be in a group together? Let's fucking make this happen. Let's all hold each other accountable. Let's meet every 2 weeks. Let's pick a book. That will help us grow. Let's do this thing. And you hold each other accountable and you share information and knowledge and you help each other grow. And it's the most powerful thing. You start to see that there are other humans that think the way you think. And that's when you start to go, family is blood sometimes. But we live in a global family now. If you don't feel accepted where you're from, if you don't feel like your culture is a good fit for you, if you don't feel like your religion is your jam, go find what your jam is. Because there's other people who are your jam. You know, you like gluten-free, vegan, all that stuff. There's a ton of other people who like gluten-free, vegan, sugar-free, all that stuff. Although, I mean, sugar-free cookies compared to real tasty cookies, chocolate chip. I mean, come on. Oh, God. But I did have cashew ice cream not long ago. Good Lord, guys. It was fucking amazing. So the next one, I love this slide. We've got the pooer. It just makes me laugh. We need to figure out what bullshit beliefs we are holding on to. There's so many bullshit beliefs we're holding on to. Hold on, I have another poll because, you know, polls are important. Here we go. Ready? So what are the bullshit beliefs that you hold on to? What are the bullshit beliefs that you hold on to? I'll tell you which ones I had when I share these, because I had a ton of them too. Oh my God, I had so many. Let's go, let's rock it. I'll give you 10 more seconds. Let's get them in there. You have a high level of performance. I like this. This is a good level of engagement. Bring it in. You can choose more than one? Or maybe you can't, actually. Sorry about that. That's okay, we'll bring it in. You could try to choose more than one. Okay. I'd choose all if I could. Yeah, I did mean to make it so you could pick more than one, so I apologize for that. Okay. We almost everyone answered, so look at this. I don't have the credentials. I got that one too. I'll talk to all of these. So I was worried that I wouldn't be accepted when I started writing about relationships. I was worried no one would listen to me. I thought everyone else was already doing it. I was totally afraid I'd fail and then I'd get rejected by the people around me. Actually, that was a big one, that the people, my fam jam, the people around me, my friends would abandon me. But I don't have the credentials. My sister's so brilliant. I said to her, I'm afraid I need to go back and do a master's degree. And at this time, I was already embedded so much in the research on relationships and human psychology. Like, I was reading every study I'd gone, I was working, selling products based on research. So I knew how to read studies. I knew how to sell based on studies. I have this real knack of remembering numbers and research. It just like sticks in my brain with stuff I love. And, I was friends with tons of psychologists and therapists. And it was interesting because my sister said to me, think about all the people who are the most influential people in the world. And I was like, okay, like who? And she's like, Oprah, Tony Robbins. All the people who are most influential in the world of psychology and personal change. And she said, if you look at it, they all created their own credentials. And it's not to say that credentials aren't important, so I'm not dismissing that. But someone else doesn't get to choose that your message is important. You get to choose that. And if your experience is, if you go through a transformation and pain and challenges in your life, which I think we all have, then you overcame it, you have a strategy and an idea of how to get through that thing. And that worked for you. So you are the evidence. And if you can speak from that experience, then you can teach from that experience. And so recognizing that what you're afraid of, the credentials that you don't have, it's important that you learn things. It's important that you educate yourself. It's important that you become knowledgeable. It's important that you're on this webinar, you're learning about yourself and things, but it's also important that you start, because you will always have a reason not to start, and you will always have a reason to not do something. First, find a reason to do something, not a reason not to. Second, just start. Just start, because all you got to do is just start. And I'll speak to that in a second, but when they look at the research on heart disease, and they looked at, there's a guy named Dr. Dean Ornish, and he did this study where he took, because when you actually think about people who have heart disease and they get a stent, they end up with a heart attack, they get a stent, which is like a little sheath of metal, sort of like a mesh metal that blows up the artery and gives it a space again in it, because in arteries, when you get a heart attack, you have a clog in your artery and your chest hurts and there's a blockage. Right? And so they go in and they put this little sheath of metal in and it blows it up and gives you a hole again in your artery. And they see that in about 2 years, only 10% of people change their lives who've had a stent. So think about that. These people have actually basically died. They've been saved from death. And only 10% of them changed their life in 2 years. That's insanity, right? So this gets studied over and over again. And so what Dean Ornish did is he did this study in Omaha, and he put people on a vegetarian diet. And oh my God, Karen, I'm so sorry to read that your husband passed from that. Sending you big love. So Dean Ornish took 333 patients. He put them in Omaha on a vegetarian diet. He gave them a dietitian. He gave them a exercise consultant. He gave them a psychologist. They had group meetings twice a week. And what was powerful is that the study only lasted 1 year. And these are people who couldn't get surgery. So they weren't even eligible for the stent. And they were people who couldn't even walk upstairs. They couldn't make love. They couldn't do all these things. And they weren't eligible for the surgery. So their choice was to change their life. And you have to remember, like when we ask people, what is the ultimate motivator for change? We go, death. If you tell someone you're afraid to die, you're going to die, so you better change your life. You would think that would change their life. But what you see is that psychologically, the fear of death is actually too great for people to focus on. So they'll change their life for a couple of weeks, and then they'll go back to the same behaviors because it's too much of an existential crisis. So very few people actually change long-term when they're faced with death, especially if they have nothing to look forward to. So this guy puts these people on this study, gets over 90% reduction in chest pain. Some of the heart disease gets reversed, which is crazy. And when he was asked, what was the difference? What was different about what you did versus what these other studies did? And he said, instead of telling people what they were going to miss or what they had to be afraid of, I asked them what they most looked forward to, how they most looked forward to feeling, what were they most excited about. And I think when we start, because I went back to school and did positive psychology, and I think when we start to see that moving towards positive emotion, what did I tell you at the start? The positive emotion opens your vision. It makes you see more. It makes you more open to opportunity. In the science of luck, which I will send you a paper on the science of luck. In the science of luck, what they see is that when they study unlucky people and lucky people, and they, of course, when you ask someone like, are you unlucky? Want to volunteer for a study? People are like, yes, I can't wait to prove how unlucky I am. Wait till you see how much shitty things happen to me, right? And they teach people what lucky people do. They become lucky. Because, that saying, when it's like, when luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And I totally believe that it's when we're open to seeing possibility. And the more you look forward to an emotion, the more you're open to possibility of experiencing that emotion. Like, imagine if you just woke up every day believing that miracles are possible. Imagine that, right? Like, how would you start your day if you were, like, I do this all the time, is what I do is I go, miracles are a thing. They happen all the time. I can't wait to have one happen to me. And I just start my day that way. And that way I'm constantly less being like, oh my God, there's freaking miracles everywhere. And you can find a miracle in a butterfly. You can find a miracle in anything. You can find a miracle in how good your fucking coffee tastes. You can find a miracle in the fact that I'm drinking clean water, right? So when I asked the question about what do you want more of, I'm just reading this comment from the chat, I struggled but had no problem writing what I want less of. Right. Because what are humans taught to do? They're taught to complain. That's how they connect with other people. Oh, you wouldn't believe what's happening in my life. You wouldn't believe how unlucky I am. You wouldn't believe all this shit. Let me tell you about all the shit. And you know what else we do? We wound identify. We talk about all our pain. We talk about all our struggles in our relationship with all our other friends who are disconnected in their relationship. We drink wine doing it, drink coffee, probably more wine than coffee, right? Because that's how we start connecting with other people. And we start using our wounds as a way to connect with people instead of using our successes and our passions and our purpose. But you'll notice that the more you step into what you love, the less you'll be able to be around people who complain all the fucking time. You'll be like, holy shit, you're killing me over here. Okay, so we got another poll, because polls are our favorite. Let's get on this one. Ready? You should be able to. There we go. So I want to see, what are you most looking forward to? What is it that you're most looking forward to? How are you looking forward to feeling? Don't you love, so that chick who told me when I sent her my writing, that woman, I shouldn't have called her a chick, sorry. When I sent her my writing and she told me that I couldn't swear, I was reading this post from Gary Vaynerchuk, and there's another really powerful speaker. She's the highest paid keynote speaker. Her name is Rachel something. She just spoke. Rachel Brennan, maybe? I can't remember. But anyways, she was saying that everyone told her from the start, you can't just sing, you can't dance when you give talks, you can't swear, you can't do anything. And she's now the most in-demand keynote speaker in the world. And Gary Vaynerchuk, I mean, he's pretty in goddamn demand, right? So hold on, I'm just going to share this with you guys. So you guys are all my homies, obviously. You know, I get that sometimes that people don't like the F word, but the F word is actually a very powerful word if not used in a cursive, offensive way. So free. I think feeling free is the most important feeling you can create for yourself, because you can't depend on other people to decide that you're free to be yourself. You have to decide that. If you put it in other people's hands, then you never will be. Authentic, yeah, which creates freedom. And all the above, fuck yeah, elated, joy, excited, right? A lot of E words for fun, good things. Okay, so let's get back up in here. So this is actually my value system. So I want you guys, I'm going to send you also a list of values. And I want you guys to create a list of what you value. There's also an exercise that I'm going to give you. So what do you value most? So for me, who I am, these are the pillars of my identity that I create, and they're fluid. So if I come up with something else, I'm going to change one of those, right? Never make who you are have to stay the same. Never make what you believe have to stay the same. Because you see people who are extremely religious or extremely political, when their views get challenged, kind of like the people who originally voted for Trump, they might now be like, oh, why did I vote for him? That was a really bad decision. But instead, they stick often more tightly to their belief, to their view, because they don't want to be seen as dumb or making a bad decision. And we do this with religion too. We see that our religion might not fully align with our authentic expression, or there might be parts of it that we don't agree with. But often people will cling much tighter to their belief system because they're afraid that it means that everything they've based their identity on is actually false. My friend Louis Loro has this great saying that is, always be prepared that one of the core pillars that you base your identity on is dead wrong. And it's usually the one you cling to most. And I've always loved that because we should allow our identities to be fluid, allow who we are to constantly be shifting as we learn new things. So for me, authenticity and integrity, staying true to myself, is probably my most important value. Growth and expansion, to always be learning, to always be expanding, to have fun in life. Like, what the fuck is the point of learning about love and relationships if we can't have fun with the shit we don't do well, right? If we can't just laugh and be like, holy shit, this world is a mind fuck and living is a mind fuck, right? And mental and emotional health and wellness, that's really important to me too, because we got one life in this vessel. We got to take care of it. We got to take care of our emotional health, and we have to build skills around that. So I'm going to give you an exercise, a group of questions to do, and they're really about like, who do you admire? Who influenced you? What would you want people to celebrate about you at your celebration of your life? I was about to say your funeral, but we don't want you to be dead when they do this. We want you to do the exercise when you're still alive. And really finding what your why is. What is your purpose for living? What do you most look forward to? What is your reason for being on this planet? And I had to do this exercise actually once at a conference where I had to write out in the old tweet format, 140 characters, what is my purpose on the planet? And mine was to help people connect deeper with themselves so they can connect deeper with other people. So hence, relationship to self 101, yeah? And so I want you to figure out, what is your why? Why are you on this planet? And remember, it can change. And the more you start speaking about who you are and what you want out of life, and when people go, that's not realistic, you go, good. That's awesome. I love not realistic goals. That's my favorite. Like, when anyone shits on your view, just be like, cool. And they're like, what? They're like, that's amazing. And just start to get into that space. It doesn't really matter whether they approve of what you want or what you love or why you're here. It only matters that you do. That's all that matters. And that passion will be conveyed. And you'll see that people will be like, holy shit, something's going on with them. They're getting extra sexy. There's some sort of hop in their step. They got a new going on. That's true, because people who are really attractive are people who are in their authentic selves. They're badass, right? They're just walking around. They're like, that's super cool that you don't agree with me. And they're like, what? But you're supposed to like take what I think and make it what you think. And you're like, yeah, I was supposed to do that. I don't do that anymore. It's pretty cool, right? Like, fuck yeah, that feels great. Even pretending that I'm doing that actually felt really fun. And I love this because there was a saying from my first coach, Kyle Cease, that he said, you can't skydive and stay on the plane. You can't skydive and stay on the plane. You have to jump. And I think of it like you have to go to the island and burn the boat. Like, you have to start. And the thing that we are most fearful of is that we're going to choose the wrong first step, that we're going to, no, we don't know by using it. You know, you find it by using it. And the reason that starting is so scary is because when you look at starting, you can think about all the things you're going to lose in your life because they're measurable, because they're already in your life. You can see all the things you're going to potentially lose. But what you can't see is what you might gain. You can't see the potential. You can't see what's possible in your life. You can't see what the fuck is about to open up and happen. And like, one thing I know for sure, which I didn't know this when I started, so I had to let go and trust because someone said it to me, so I'm saying it to you, is that there's something magical about when you step into your truth, that the universe just conspires. And it's fucked. It's crazy. The more you get to know who you are and love that, the more the world just begins to conspire to make sure that happens for you. And you know that idea of like that quote from Marianne Williamson, like, who am I to be this talented, this beautiful, this smart? Who are you not to be? And that's so true. Who are you not to be? Like, who am I to have this opinion, to want these dreams, to do this thing, to have fucking boundaries? Who are you not to be? And when you accept all the truths of what got you here and where you are, and when you accept exactly that in this moment, you feel aligned. Like, this moment is what alignment feels like. This moment is what, like, feeling supported, feeling loved, feeling accepted for who you are. That's alignment. And you might feel that from me, you might feel that from all the other people who are on here, but what you're really feeling it is from yourself. We're just the evidence. We're just the proof that it exists. And so really the behavior that we're giving to you as your clan is that we're giving you a behavior that you can model for yourself. You don't have to wait for anything. You're already there. You don't have to become who you are. You already are who you are. You just have to let go of the things you are not. And the exercise is starting to figure out which parts you are not through understanding your subconscious, understanding what you were taught, understanding what works for you and what doesn't. You know, I was born and raised Catholic. I had to learn that there's a lot of things about Catholicism that just didn't work for me. But you're born into your religion. You don't choose it. You're born into it, and then you figure out what works for you and what doesn't. You're born into what you're supposed to do in a relationship. You figure out what works for you, what doesn't. And you construct you. And you just give birth to it. I think it's such a beautiful journey. And, you know, and this is the last slide, is to say that you must always live in love on your edge. That you have to always get to this place where you're ready to be wrong, where you're ready to fail, where you're ready to, if you don't know what the outcome's going to look like, it means that you're creating something new. If you don't know what the conversation's going to be or how it's going to go, it means that you're creating something new. But if you already know how it's all going to go, then you've already lived that moment. And often we stay in that moment, even if it's not fun, because we're afraid of what's on the other side. What's on the other side is where all the magic is. You know, the juice is in the journey. That's for sure. There ain't no doubt about that. So I love all of you. It's open to, I think, you know, guys, I obviously have one more poll, because who doesn't have another poll? I have some Q&As too that I'm going to jump in here. Oh, I was still sharing the poll results. I apologize. Here it is. You ready, guys? Because when you make a commitment publicly, because trust me, we're all documenting the names here. When you make a commitment publicly, you are more likely to do it. When you actually show up, you're more likely to do it. When you actually come with a friend and you say, hey, let's hold each other accountable, you're more likely to do it. And what a cool thing to be able to know, right? To be able to say, like, I'm committing to this today. You're all committing to this today. Isn't that awesome? And all of you who haven't answered the goddamn poll, you get your mouse over and you click on there. You got 8 seconds left. Right? Let's fucking do this. I love this. And you all already did do it. You're right. You know, you did it by signing up for this. by being here, by showing up. I love that 52 of you actually did that. So that's awesome. So there's your results. There's always the funny ones. All right, so we have some Q&A, so I'm going to go through those. I'm going to honor your time too. Okay, so what about refiguring out your life when following passions didn't exactly work out? Well, you have to remember that if you take step one and it doesn't seem to work, then it's not that you have to start over, right? Because for the most part, what we think is that, okay, well, if I do step one and it doesn't work, then I have to start over. But that's actually not true. You gain a bunch of information from step one, and then step two is the new direction. So step two becomes the new direction. But you got so much information from step one that now it's step two. But we often think, well, if I fail, then I have to start over. No, you don't. You can never go back to where you were. It's impossible because you always gain new information. You know, like I remember launching this group coaching program once, and it like landed on crickets. It was like, no one responded. And I was like, I could take that as like, no one wants to work with me. There's no group coaching. I'm done. I'll never have a career. You know, I could have gone all that way. But instead I was like, wow, I didn't do it right. I need to do it differently. So I did it differently. Just like actually when I launched this webinar, I called it something different and I tried a new platform. And the new platform sucked. So I transferred it over to Zoom because I was already familiar with Zoom and Eventbrite. But I tried something new. It didn't work. And I just changed it. So then I'll change it again and I'll try it out. And you know, you just have to be willing to be adaptable. Be adaptable and be flexible. That's the most important thing. Okay. Let's see here. I'm a widow for 3 years, married for 31, now trying to navigate the single life. Who am I now? How do I create boundaries while not trying to fill a void that I'm trying to fill due to loss? I've been in a relationship with a guy who I think is a really good fit. However, he told me about his background, one being a sex addict. He was molested as a child. He recently lost his 21-year-old daughter, so I thought we had something in common with grief. However, we thought we both begin on the same highway of grief. We take different exits, which means I'm farther along in my grief as he is not. I'm an empath and have always been a great listener and will help anyone who needs it. When it comes to taking care of myself and creating boundaries, I sell myself short. I have a hard time saying no, mostly because I don't want to experience loss again. It's so hard. Well, first off, I would say that when you say I'm an empath and always have been a great listener and will help anyone who needs it, you're going to match for anyone who needs it. So that's like a classic permission-giving saying that someone who's codependent will do. So you have to take responsibility that you should not help anyone who needs it. Nope. You should help people who are safe to help. You should help people who want to help themselves. You should help people want to grow. Also, making grief a common connector in a relationship is, I would make finding joy the common connector, not grief, because then your connection to each other will be through pain. And you want to make your connection to each other through joy. Last thing, and I think you should probably maybe do a webinar on relationship, like relationships 101 or dating 101, is I would say that when you say you're further along the path of grief compared to him, you've now created a hierarchy, so he's not able to reach you. So you're his guide, you're his mentor, he can't reach you, he has no access to you because you're here, he's here. So you've created a hierarchy in the relationship. You have to join him here. You might have further processed some of it, but maybe he's further along in some other things here, you know? So you want to find commonalities that are positive, not negative, and you also want to give someone access to your heart. We already know because you're afraid to experience grief again and loss again, which, hey, my heart goes out to you. That's horrible, and that's such a loss. And by building in these systems so no one can meet you, you're just preventing yourself from experiencing love. All right. Epiphany. It is my own judgments that cause me to hide or project how I need to act due to the realization that people judge. A mirror shit. I love that. Yes, it is your own judgments that cause you to hide or project how I need to act to the realization that people judge. Yes, it is always us. Isn't that crazy? Now, people will judge us. There's no doubt about that. But if you shift because of people's judgments, then you make their judgments valid. If you hide yourself because of people's judgments, then you make their judgments important, more important than your self-expression. Now, judgments, because often we can take judgments and we can make them, we can take feedback and make it feel like a judgment. So being able to recognize when you get defensive. Defensiveness is a really good sign that we're afraid our self-worth is being challenged. The fear of stepping into being my authentic self is so huge. For rejection and creating waves and tipping life on its head as I know it, how do I step through the fear? I lose words when I need to speak. Any advice? Practice, 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 practice. And practice speaking true, authentic, vulnerable things with people who have you on your edge, but you're safe to share with. Like, you don't want to give all of yourself to someone who's not safe to share with. It's really important that you curate the people that you're opening up to. You know, like, you don't want to open your heart to people who are not safe to open your heart with. You know, this is this like idea like, well, I'm just open and vulnerable and I just share with people. Often we're giving ourselves permission to do that so that we don't have to take accountability for a boundary, which would be harder to do. You know, it'd be scarier to put a boundary in than to overshare. And just being able to learn that is a dance, but you have to be able to call yourself out. And we all have friends who will call ourselves out. So it's really important that you have one of those friends be really close with you that whole time. How do you tell if someone's safe to share? Well, you see how they handle sharing. But you don't open your heart to people who are not sharing the relational agreements that you're creating. You know, like when you create a relationship with someone, you say, hey, like, I'm really into growth. I'm really into transformation. And I'm really into growing and learning together. Are you into that? And they go, yeah. And you go, okay, well, here's what it would look like. And you step towards that. Okay, let's see here. How do you change the cycle of codependency? I cannot figure out how to cut the link between using others' validation in love or friendship to make me feel good about myself. Read the book Codependent No More and start to take hyper responsibility for where you do that. Just start to see, where do you create the I'm trying to fix people, and where am I bringing in projects in my life? Who am I over controlling? Am I over parenting? You know, all of these different ways that we get our fucking opinions into other people's business. And remember that when you're taking care of people, you're creating contracts that they need to be broken or they need your caring. So, you know, it's like when an addict gets sober, the people who are dating the addict have nothing to do anymore. Now they got to deal with their own shit. So remember, when you're constantly taking care of other people, it's usually a distraction from having to clean up your own kitchen. And that's just a high level of responsibility to take for ourselves. How do we become more aware of when we're coming from a place of fear, and how do we change our innate response? Well, here's the thing. I know that when a job is scary, but I know it's a leap for me, that I should do it. There's Q&A in the control bar. You could type your question in the chat and I'll answer it. We don't have that much time. I'm going to do 5 more minutes. So I know when a job is both scary because I don't have the skill set to necessarily do it, but I know it's going to force me to grow. So just being able, I know I can check in with that. Everyone knows when they can check into something. This is good for me, but it's scary. When you can get that feeling, what it feels like, you can move that to other areas of your life. And, you know, a lot of the times things that are going to grow us are going to be scary. So you don't want to make fear not available. You just don't want to make fear decide for you. And how do you know if fear is deciding for you not to do something? Well, if you know it's good for you and it's growth and expansion, then you know that it's choosing for you if you don't do it. I'm struggling with getting all of the stuff out of my head that alcoholic narcissist embedded, and that he ended 8 years via email 5 days after I left for business. How do I release the I must be all that if he could throw me away like that? Well, how do you release it? Is you acknowledge that you gave all of your power and you allowed, on some level, I say that with compassion and empathy, that you tolerated the behavior of an alcoholic narcissist. And when he finally let you go, it reminded you that you should have let his ass or her ass go far before. And so when you can recognize that he did the very thing you always wanted to do, then you can see the power in it. I mean, the guy or girl saved you, literally saved you. Like him letting you go is the greatest thing that could have ever happened to you. And he did everything you should have done, which was step towards yourself. And now he pushed you towards yourself. So what feels like a great betrayal from him is actually a great betrayal being mirrored from yourself. And so when you can step towards that, then you can go, holy shit, that's fucking crazy. This guy saved my life. What a narcissistic asshole. Thank you. Right? Like kind of fucked up, right? So really powerful to step into that space, and then you don't turn it into an injury, you turn it into an empowerment. The other thing you start to see is that you go, wow, there's so much from that you don't, if you make your self-worth determined by him, he can't even choose himself, so how can he choose you, right? Like any narcissistic person or alcoholic or both is in deep pain. So making your self-worth anything to do with their behavior is just selfish for ourselves to do that. It's like ironically arrogant to believe that why they are choosing or not choosing us is because of us when we see them in deep suffering. Sorry, that stuff gets me real lit up. Okay. What if it's your partner? I don't know what that's about. How do you not compare yourself to other people, like your ex who is showing off about their great career and living the dream of moving to another state you both had, when you're not feeling great about where you are in life right now and haven't discovered your true purpose yet? Well, first off, you don't fucking follow them on Instagram or Facebook, right? Like, you fucking stop following them. And second is the belief that you're not where you should be, right? Like, if you just say, I'm exactly where I should be. Because we look at an ex and we go, oh, they moved on and they're so happy and life is so good. And like, fuck them for doing that and showing me that. And they don't deserve to be happy. Why not? Why don't they deserve to be happy? Because they were an asshole? Because they were whatever? Imagine if I wished unhappiness to all my exes because they hurt me. I mean, first off, they don't even know I'm doing that. So it's not hurting them. They're like having a good life, posting these pictures on Instagram, not even knowing you're stalking it. Secondly, like, why do you want to follow someone who's your ex and it hurts you to see their stuff? Now that you're living at your highest level of knowledge, you're like, oh shit, that doesn't work for me. I should probably not do that because it hurts me. Cool, I'm going to stop following them. Awesome, I think that's a great decision. How do you not compare yourself? You compare yourself, you can do that. But don't compare yourself to the highlight reel of people's lives. You know, you don't know what's going on below that. You don't know. People get out of relationships and get into them right away to avoid their pain. You know, I'm just like not even interested in going down that path with exes, you know, when I used to think about them, because it's just not helpful. It's not healthy. It's not moving me forward. And you can trust that when you let go of needing to be somewhere else than where you are, you'll find your purpose. But when you're busy trying to make your life look different or be some way different than it is, you can't accept where it is. So then you're disconnected from the truth. If you're disconnected from the truth, then you can't change your life. If you're disconnected from who you truly are, you can't change your life. But if you can go, man, I feel stuck, and I've been obsessed with my ex's Instagram, that's not feeling good. I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to stop doing that because it's not great to make myself feel sad. And I'd really like to find my purpose. Man, I can't wait for that to show up. Universe, God, I'm so open to figuring out what my purpose is. And in order to prove that, I'm going to stop checking out my exes and other people's Instagrams who make my life feel like shit. Okay, I'm going to stop doing drugs. I'm going to stop randomly banging people. I'm going to do all the things that are required for someone to find themselves. I trust you. Cool, right? That's the conversation to have. Okay. What do you think of casual relationships? Can they be healthy with boundaries if you're not ready for a real relationship? So we're coming from 17-year-old marriage. I mean, I think you can have casual relationships. I think it's really important that you set very clear boundaries around the casual relationship. And I think it's very important that you really are clear that you are likely going to catch feelings. It's just true. In the moment your desire or intention for the relationship begins to shift, you need to honor that and you need to be open about it. Because if you start creating these secret contracts where you're like, I'm going to bang them into a relationship, or her, or I'm going to blow them into a relationship. I'm going to give them the best blowjob of their life, and then they're going to fall in love with me and we're going to be together. No, they're going to be like, I am getting the best blowjobs of my life and I'm not in a relationship. This is cray. So just be open and honest about your true relationship intention. Don't masquerade as wanting a relationship if you don't want one. Create boundaries around the sex and sexuality and what's safe. If you want sexual fidelity, be clear about that. Just be very clear. Use protection, take care of their health, take care of your health, be honest. Just be so honest. That's all that's important. Okay, should we still pursue our purpose interest even if it doesn't seem practical? For example, to become an actor, artist, singer. I mean, that's a judgment. Why isn't it practical? Right? The practical is even in quotations. Just pursue it. Pursue it as a side gig. Start doing it because it's, you don't have to turn it into your money-making dream, but it might become it. Do it because it matters to you. Do it because, you know, it brings you joy. Do it because it's something you like to do at open mics on a Tuesday, you know? Do it because it matters to you. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. Do you have one-on-one coaching? I do have a coach who works for me. I don't do one-on-one coaching anymore. I'm going to do group stuff. And so when I mean groups is like 5-day things where we're just going to fucking crush it. We're going to crush life and it's going to be amazing. I might start a group like mastermind sort of thing. I haven't decided yet. We'll see what happens with the Facebook group from this. Because I think that would be fun where I take a group of 8 people and we just crush it. We just go through it all. We do, you know, maybe 8 weeks. 8 weeks, 8 people. That seems like a really good time. So I'll think about that and then I'll send it out to you guys. But we'll do a follow-up with the Facebook group and I'll do a live on there. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to do there's 3 questions. I'm going to do 3 questions. How do I stop wanting to fix an ex's wounds? He doesn't even think he has them, but my brain wants to solve all of the problems. I'm obviously still way in love with him. It's okay to be in love with him. And how do you stop wanting to? You don't stop wanting to because you're going to want to. So if I was like, oh, stop wanting to, and you're like, but I want to. And I'm like, exactly. So you can't stop wanting to, right? Like, don't think about an elephant. We all just thought about an elephant. He's cute too. I just saw him. So nice. So how do you stop wanting to? You don't. You stop trying to. You see that it's an unhealthy behavior that's distracting you. Now I would ask you, what is it distracting you from? What are your wounds that it's distracting you from? One is not feeling worthy enough without trying to help someone or fix someone. So there's one. So being able to recognize what is it that you are afraid to help and fix in yourself and start doing that. That's the first step. Just go there. That's step 1. Figure out what that is. Buy a book about it. Join a group. Have a conversation. Google it. Do something like that. Are you going to do a group thing in the States? Yes, because I now have a U.S. passport. Or not a passport, a U.S. visa. So yes, I am going to do stuff in the States. After 3 years of being single from being very hurt by my ex, I started dating again, and now my current new partner triggers are coming up, and we are a long-distance relationship, 2 hours away. It's been hard for me to trust. How do I stop thinking of the worst outcomes with my new relationship? You don't. Because if I told you to stop, you wouldn't stop, right? You'd be like, well, but I think about it. And I go, yeah, stop. And you're like, but I can't, right? Exactly. So it's not about not wanting something, because the moment you start to reject something, it just gets magnified, right? So instead what you do is you say to your partner, I have these old wounds and triggers from a past relationship, and they're really scary. They come up every once in a while, and I know they're not realistic with you. I was really wondering if you could help me heal these. They're really scary for me to even share. Even having this conversation makes me feel really vulnerable. And I was hoping that you could help me heal these. What do you think about that? Now, most people would go, yeah, thank you for sharing. Or you could say, like, when I got really insecure the other day, it's because of this thing. Can you help me work through that? And they go, yeah, right? And when people don't accept that kind of honesty, they're not your people. Right? You know, but when you can make it so that now there is an element of reality that's really important, which is your current partner actually doing things that are triggering you because they're actually not okay? And then that behavior needs to be important to call on, because your triggers are there for a reason. You have to recognize that your triggers are there to protect you too. It's just that sometimes a trigger can be coding something that's a 2 out of 10, can code it as a 10. because the last time something like that happened, it ended in devastation. So it is about, like, if you have a friend that's really honest with you, you can go to your friend and say, is this a realistic trigger? What do you think I should do with this? And we all have the friend who tells us the truth. We often avoid them when we don't want the truth, but those are the real people you should go to. So I hope that's helpful. So I love all of you. You're going to get a copy of the recording as soon as it's processed. It usually takes a couple hours at least. So I'll send all this stuff out to you likely tomorrow. I have a couple things in the morning tomorrow that I'm presenting. But I love all of you. I hope you all have the most wonderful night. It's such a beautiful thing to be able to share this with you. And I can't wait to see all the stuff you guys create. Aren't we so excited? We all committed to changing our fucking game, right? So I love you all. You all have the most wonderful night. And we will talk soon. And I'm